Okay, hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. What's going on? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is July 4th, Independence Day. Um, so, no stream yesterday. We rescheduled it to today because of the holiday. I actually had like holiday stuff with like family and stuff to do yesterday, so sorry. Unfortunately, I don't have enough subscribers to just send out a notice. You know, you have to have a certain number before YouTube lets you actually communicate with people, you know? So that kind of sucks. But hopefully you guys saw my thing there, you know. Hey, Lewis the Hedgehog. Yeah, not on your typical time. Sorry about that. Yeah, I wasn't able to actually I wasn't able to stream yesterday, and YouTube doesn't allow you to send notifications if you're not large enough, so anyway. But thanks for joining, man. Really appreciate it. Um, we will go ahead and get started then. So, um, anyway, before we go on, I was gonna focus mainly today on environmental stuff because, you know, we have a lot of very strange and weird weather going on right now, which is very bad news for a lot of people. Um, but before we do that, I was going to talk about a couple of things that are in the news, and then that'll be the main focus of what we have. But before we move on, here's where we're at. Let's take a look at our drawing here. Getting kind of close to the end. So I did want to add one little guy here. I drew this skeleton looking thing, and I do want to add him to the side, so let's just make that multiply, right? And then here's a trick for you guys. You see how his like outline is kind of like light. So the way you darken that up is you go up to where do you do that? You go to adjustments, and you go to levels, and then you can here kind of adjust the level sees to darken them up. So there we go. See how now the outer line work is a lot darker. And let's make him a little smaller there. We don't want him to be too big. I don't want him to cover too much of the everything. And there we go. That looks about right. Like right there, right? Looks kind of good. It's to cover that sort of, got a lot of blank space on that side. So that'll cover that up. And now we can color in our sort of skeleton knight guy on the side here. Anyway, cool, cool, cool. So, before we jump into the meat of the topic for today, there was a couple of things in the news I wanted to discuss. First thing, and I'm sure you're all probably tired of hearing about this, but you know, just wanted to say a few things about it, is that Bill Cosby got released from prison. And it's kind of bullshit. I don't know, man. So he got off on a technicality. Apparently he made some kind of deal with one of the prosecutors. And then a new prosecutor came in, and like he basically confessed to the crime, but the promise was that this would not be used as evidence against him. And then a new prosecutor came in and actually did use it as evidence against him, and somehow this means he gets to get off. So basically the cops lied to him, which is, you know, bad. Obviously police are not allowed to lie. But cops lie all the time, right? Like, all the time. And it actually is not against the law for the police to make promises and then not come through on those promises. That's like, that happens all the time. And that's one thing that if you ever find yourself, you know, on the wrong side of the law, they'll try to get you to confess to shit that you didn't do, saying that if you confess, you'll only go to prison for 4 years or something, but if we go to trial, then you're going to get the maximum sentence. And that's a tactic that they use all the time to, like, intimidate people, and people end up going to prison for shit they didn't do all the time. That's another thing that we got to remember in this country. That happens constantly. You know, whether it's like the guy was actually involved in the crime or he wasn't, or he was involved to some extent and he's getting punished for stuff that, wasn't actually his crime, but like maybe an accomplice, that kind of thing. Like people getting like sort of over bloated prison sentences happens constantly in this country all the time through plea deals and shit like that. People getting pressured into stuff because they're scared because they think they're going to go to jail for 30 years, and so they like admit to shit that they didn't do so that they can get a reduced sentence, and then they end up staying in jail for fucking like way longer than they were promised anyway. And the thing is that the state is under no obligation to fulfill any of these promises. That's another thing. So if a cop comes to you and they try to give you a plea deal, right, and you take the deal, then they're really under no obligation to actually go through with that deal. There's no law that says that they have to, right? So, which is sort of like, now what can happen is what happened in this case exactly. It's like, the lawyer took it, and this kind of goes to show, like, the more money you have, the more likely you are to get out of prison. No, and it doesn't really even seem to matter what you're in prison for, because the thing is that Mr. Cosby kind of admitted to doing that stuff, man. And it's sort of like when you first hear of a celebrity getting like, accused of something like this. I don't know about you, but my first reaction is to think that it's a setup. That's my first reaction, right? Because, somebody like Bill Cosby has millions and millions of dollars, right? And, it is true that people like that are targets. And then you see, like, okay, well, it wasn't just one person that accused him. It was 60 different women, right? And you go, holy fuck, 60 women? Like, like 60 random strangers don't just get together for no reason and make up a story just to fuck somebody up. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't happen, So, and that's kind of the pattern when it comes to people like this, these sort of serial rapist, serial abuser types. You know what I mean? Like, it's never just one person. They never just have one victim. They always have multiple victims. Look at like Harvey Weinstein, right? Just like, wasn't just one person that he took advantage of and like fucking, sexually assaulted or raped or whatever. It was like dozens and dozens of women, and that's what it is. It's like, men like this have power and they enjoy that power, and they use their status because they know that people have a bias. People like me, they know that people like me have a bias which will automatically assume that they're innocent. You know what I mean? So that's another thing that, I understand that in myself. This is a bias that, I admit it. I instantly thought that he was innocent when I first heard him, right? So kind of the same thing. Like another example of this sort of bias is Michael Jackson. When I first heard way back in the day of all the things Michael Jackson was accused of, the first thing I thought of was that it's a setup, right? And, and it's a bias. I mean, I was a kid during the 80s. So, I like Michael Jackson. I mean, I still like Thriller, right? I like that album, And I admit this now in myself. This is a bias. This is like something that, you have to understand that this is something that peppers your judgment when it comes to shit like this, right? Like, I don't know, it does for me. I mean, maybe some other people don't have this bias, but so anyway, it just kind of goes to show that there really are two laws. There's the laws for the rich and powerful people, and then the laws for the rest of us. And it's just really like the time that you would spend in jail for any given crime is directly proportional to how much money you have. And it really shouldn't be like that. But there you go. And in this case, it's not. It doesn't really have anything to do with race. In this case, this is all just class. And Bill Cosby's class means that he's able to hire lawyers that are effective. You know, the more money you spend on a lawyer, the better effective they seem to be, right? And it's not only that, but his status as a rich and rich and famous person means that he gets away with shit that the rest of us just won't get away with. So I don't know. At least he spent some fucking time in prison, I guess. I mean, he is what, 80 years old at this point, so he's getting ready to kick the bucket at any given moment. So Bill Cosby will probably be dead within 5 years. It's still kind of fucked up, though. It's still sort of, oh shit, is that the wrong, wait a minute. Okay. I need to make a layer over that. There we go. It's still kind of fucked up, though. It's still sort of like, he should still really spend the rest of his life in prison. I mean, if there was any justice in this world, which there really isn't. So, I don't know. One funny thing I heard, and I guess this is true, while he was in prison, somebody threw a hot dog at him, and it, like, hit him and made him fall down some stairs. I thought that shit was hilarious. I'm sorry, like, and I know it's wrong to laugh at the pain of a blind man in prison who falls downstairs, but he's also a blind rapist. Right? Is it okay to laugh at a rapist when a rapist gets hit in the face with a hot dog, falls down some stairs? I think so, because it's, you know what it is? It's and I was actually talking about this in my stream last night with, I did a stream, not last night, but on Friday night with my friend Inshoma on his channel, which I'll put a link in the thing, Inshoma Lives. We're actually talking about this. And it's kind of like, a bigger betrayal in this case, because the guy had such a family-friendly image, you know what I mean? And it really sort of like feels like a betrayal, because he's like, for like 30 years and shit, like making these kid-friendly TV shows, reading to children, stuff like that. And the Cosby Show was all about how, like, an African American family can be like, moral and clean and good, and none of the kids were gangsters and nothing like that, and he plays a character who's like a good person and blah 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 blah. And he's like a role model for millions of people, thinking like, this is how you do it the right way. This is like all that shit. And then you find out, like, behind the scenes that, like, who he really is. You know what I mean? And that's got to be just a fucking kick in the fucking, like, nuts for everybody who grew up, like, admiring this person. It's got to be, like, really fucked up. And that's why I think it feels like such a betrayal to find out, like, Bill Cosby in general, like, in particular, is guilty of the shit that he did. You know what I mean? Like, it, like, makes it worse. Like, if we knew he was an asshole already, like, if he was somebody like, say, fucking, Andrew Dice Clay or something, you know what I mean? Like, some celebrity with a image that wasn't so, like, clean and wholesome, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be so bad. So, anyway, let's move on from that. I already spent too much time talking about this fucking guy. One more thing before we get into the meat of our stream. Another item that I actually thought was really good news this time in the news. So, in California, the state is going to, like, if you in California got laid off or something because of the pandemic, and you need, you're about to get evicted or whatever, the state of California is going to pay 100% of your back rent if you qualify. Which I thought that shit was incredible when I heard that. I couldn't believe that. Like, 100%. Holy fucking crap. That's going to save a lot of people's, like, bacon right there. So apparently California has been doing really good and there's a $5 billion surplus, which is amazing. Um, and this is how Gavin Newsom wants to use the money, you know. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, the fact that he is being recalled probably factored into this decision a little bit. You can't really see that color doesn't really differentiate from the background too much. Let's do sort of a, does that stand out? Yeah, that looks a little bit better. See, I shouldn't have chose like a dingy gray for the background, because now it's like this guy has body armor, you can't really tell. I guess I could make the rest of his armor just red, like kind of variants of red, I guess. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, the fact that he's getting recalled probably pays a lot into this, right? So it might not be 100% an altruistic reason, but I don't care. I think that's fantastic because, you know, we have right now in this country, there's a looming eviction crisis, right? And for the last year, you know, evictions have been there's been a moratorium on evictions, right? Because, you know, millions upon millions of people lost their jobs over the last year, right? So it kind of like, you know, saved a lot of people from getting like evicted. I mean, especially evicted during a pandemic when there are no other jobs. You know, we would have like literally like 100 million new homeless people over the last year if they didn't do that, right? Now the country's opening up a little bit. Now that you know, something like what 65% of all adults have had their you know, their vaccinations, right? Actually, let's step backward on that one. Now that you know, the federal moratorium on evictions is about to end. In fact, it was going to end in July here, and they extended it. The CDC extended it for one more month, and they said basically that's it. So after you know, August is that's it. August 1st, you know, and there already have been places that have been trying to get around this federal moratorium. You know, people are already being evicted. That's the shitty part, right? Even though it's like supposed to have stopped, it's like it actually, some places in the country, you know, they've managed to find ways around it. So that's kind of fucked up. But now it's gonna be major. On August 1st, shit's gonna hit the fan, right? In some states in this country. Looks like California might actually not have this problem. So yeah, California has a very large surplus now, $5 billion surplus in the state government, right? Which is kind of amazing because if you remember, it wasn't even 10 years ago. You know what? 2000, maybe what was it, like 2010, 2009, right around that time when we were right in the middle of the big financial crisis, and California was kind of screwed around that time. They were giving IOUs to teachers. They were furloughing state workers. You know, people like mailmen and shit were like working for free. They were working for IOUs, that kind of thing. You know, they were like cutting people's salaries and all of that. You know, and we went from that to having a budget surplus in a decade. You know, and some of that is also, some of this surplus is also due to federal money. So we can't completely take all the credit, obviously, for this. But it is kind of amazing. It is kind of amazing how far, you know, and the reason why California is in the black so much is because they raised taxes, right? So Jerry Brown becomes, you know, there was that election where Jerry Brown was elected. What was it, like 2012, I think, was Jerry Brown? Somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact date. You know, because we had Schwarzenegger in there for a little while. And, you know, Schwarzenegger tried his best, but he was hamstrung by the Republican Party, right? And there was a law in California, right, that basically said that they couldn't raise any taxes without a 3/4 majority in the state Senate, right? So every time somebody would try to raise some taxes, the a very small number of Republicans would block it, you know, because of that rule. Right. So since they couldn't raise taxes, and this was like for like 30 years, they had this rule, and they couldn't raise taxes for like 30 years. So what do you do when you can't raise taxes? You have to cut stuff. Well, what gets cut? You know, teachers. What can the state cut? Right. They can cut teachers, education. They cut firefighters. They never cut police. That's one thing. Barely ever. Right. They cut firefighters, they cut fire protections, they cut, um, stuff like that, welfare programs, environmental programs, that kind of thing. Right. All of that shit got cut to the bone for years and years and years. And while all the rest of the country, the Republicans used to look at California and say it was a failed state. You remember that? California was like a cesspool. It's filled with drug addicts. Taxes are ridiculously high, and all of this stuff. And you don't get anything from it because the government doesn't have any money. Blah 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 blah. And it's because they're spending all their money on this, this, and that, and they should just cut taxes and whatever, right? And then a overwhelming Democratic majority in the state legislature gets elected. Jerry Brown becomes the governor, and they get rid of that rule, right? And they're able to finally raise fucking taxes. And they raise taxes on the richest people in California. Because remember, California has lots of industry. It also has extremely rich people that live here, right? There are, the average median income in Los Angeles and Hollywood and stuff is skewed very far to the right because there are a very large number of millionaires that live in California. Right. And so they finally raise taxes, and it takes a few years, and then California is suddenly in the black. California can pay for all of this stuff. Doesn't have to furlough teachers anymore, blah, 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 right? All that stuff, like all those problems they were having for decades and decades, finally like go away. And then when there's a crisis, so they're able to save up this rainy day fund. And when there's a crisis like there is now, suddenly they have $5 billion in this rainy day fund, and they're able to do shit like pay off every single person in the state's fucking back rent so that they don't get evicted, and we don't have like, 10 million more homeless people in the state. It's incredible. I'm actually like very, very stoked to even hear this, and I don't even rent. I like own my place. Right. And I'm kind of wondering how the conservatives are going to take this. I'm wondering how are they going to spin it, because they're not going to just let it go. They're going to have to spin it somehow. They're going to have to claim that it's communism or something, or that it's destroying something or whatever, or it's controlling you, blah, blah, blah. There's going to have to be some way for them to kind of bullshit themselves and bullshit their followers into thinking that the state paying off your back rent so that you don't end up homeless is a bad thing. Like, how are they going to do this? And that's what I'm kind of wondering. And I haven't really seen any reactions from the usual suspects yet. People like Ben Shapiro and shit like that. Haven't really seen anything yet from them talking about it. I think it's just not big enough news. But it is apparently a thing that's already happening. You can already go, if you look, I think it's covidassistance.gov or whatever, and you can find, if you're eligible, the state will pay back 100% of your back rent, which is kind of fucking amazing. And I think that the other states are going to have to step up. You know what I mean? Because this is going to happen in August. August is when that goes away, and that's going to be a big fucking thing in the news. And it's going to really fuck a lot of people up. And I'm hoping that something can get done at the federal level as well, because if we leave it up to the states are really not going to do very much about it. I don't think very many other states are in the same position that California is with a huge surplus like this. Because states can usually not You know, the states have to actually borrow money. They, you know, it's not like the federal government who can just, you know, press a button and print like another, you know, $50 million or some shit. You know, the states actually have to budget their stuff. They can't, you know, they don't have a sovereign currency. They have to actually like, you know, borrow money and all that when they need to. So here's hoping though, you know, I think personally though, this is going to make a lot of the other states look bad. You know, like I think a lot of people in the other states are going to be like, well, hey, California is fucking giving rent assistance to people. How come Texas can't do it? How come Louisiana can't do it? How come fucking Kentucky can't do it? What kind of excuses are they going to come up with, you know, in order to like try to bullshit their people into thinking that this is like bad? I don't know. We'll see a lot of that probably within the next month or so. Anyway, so I thought that was some good news. But our main subject for this stream is, of course, environmental. So there is a lot of bad stuff happening to the environment. I'm sure you're all aware of this massively gigantic heat wave that has hit the western part of the United States, which is, and also Canada. Um, it was last week. Some of the highest temperatures ever recorded just in the nation were like recorded last week. And the reason for this is because there was a thing called a heat dome, right? So what the hell is a freaking heat dome? You know, I'm sure like you probably, I had no idea what this shit is, right? So this is a heat dome. You can kind of see this. I think I got this from like NBC News or something like that. But basically, there's the jet stream that goes around the world like this, and the jet stream sort of undulates, right? And you see how it makes this sort of parabola kind of, you know, like it sort of looks like the Greek letter, like omega. You see that? It's not supposed to be doing that. That's not supposed to be. Can I zoom in on this a little bit? Let me see if I can zoom in. There we go. It's not supposed to be doing that. The jet stream is supposed to be usually a lot more, you know, straight than this. And what it is that this massive cone of hot air is focused over this area, and it's deformed the jet stream, and so the jet stream is actually keeping it confined to this area. And apparently that's what a heat dome is. I had no idea. That's some crazy fucking shit right there. So right now, and it's over, you see it's over the northern parts of California and Washington and Oregon and Idaho and all that, and also British Columbia over there. And that's some crazy fucking shit right there, man. That's like, let me zoom back out here. Pretty amazing. So we've been seeing some extremely high temperatures in these areas. There was on last Sunday of, what was last Sunday? Last Sunday was the 27th in Seattle. There, it was 104 degrees in Seattle, right? It never gets that hot in Seattle. Like, that's unbelievable. You know, that's kind of like a once in a century kind of thing, right? Um, then on the next day, on Monday, the next day it was 108 degrees in Seattle, which is like insane, right? In Portland, it was 108 on it was 108 on the 25th, right, which was I think Friday, and then on Sunday it was 112. I mean 112 degrees, and then on Monday it was 116 degrees. 116. Holy, that's like Death Valley. You know what I mean? Like, and this is in the Pacific Northwest. It's supposed to like be rainy and stuff in the Pacific Northwest around this time. Gloomy, rainy, you know, like that kind of thing. You know, this is like extreme sort of hot melting desert, like Sahara desert kind of fucking weather, you know? Remember also these measurements are taken in the shade, because that's how they can, that's how they calculate the temperature, because there's too many variables as to like if you take the temperature out of the shade. So in the shade where it's shady, 116 degrees. That's fucking nuts, dude. There was a town in Lytton called Lytton in British Columbia, where it hit 121 degrees. Okay, which is not only a new record there, but I mean, I'm sure you understand 121 degrees is like you can die from that just from walking around outside. That's like, 121 degrees is like frying an egg kind of fucking hot. And apparently this started a fire which destroyed the entire town. Something like 90% of this town was destroyed in this massive fucking wildfire. So here's another picture of this. Let me just move this over here. This is before in Lytton. This is in, British Columbia. This is before. This is after. Look at that shit. That's like the whole town is gone. Just one day later, massive fire just roars through, just destroys fucking everything, right? Here's an aerial view of this town. See, it's 90% of the town was destroyed in these fires. That's absolutely fucking insane. And the thing is, the same thing happened in 2018 in California. What was the name of that town? Was it Paradise? Something like that? CA Paradise Town burns down. Down in let's see, that's what it was. Towns of Paradise and Concal were almost completely destroyed, each losing about 95% of their structures. This is in the Camp Fire in 2018 in California. That was the year that I had to evacuate myself. That was some scary shit that year. I'm not even joking. Like 2018 wildfire, the fire came like seriously within 20 feet of my door. Was freaky as hell. I had to like bail. I couldn't sleep. I had to like go to my like aunt-in-law's house, and we are just like watching the fucking news, trying to like determine if my house was burning down, debating if I should go back and try to do something. And then you go, well, what can you do? What the fuck am I gonna do? I can't do anything. Like show up with a fire hose and shit. Like, no, dude. And that's the shitty thing about like a wildfire, is that you're powerless. You can't stop it. There's nothing that you yourself personally can do to stop a wildfire. You need help of other people. You need fire engines and like, those like planes that drop the fire retardant and stuff like that. Apparently what my neighbor was saying, because my neighbors stayed and were like, they used up all the fire extinguishers and shit to like try to stop it. And they said that one of those planes came and like doused it and put out the fire and saved everybody's fucking houses, right? Which is great, fantastic. And it's like, well, fuck, how many other houses were not as lucky? And what if they determined that, because the thing is that it's all determined by resources. How many resources can you get over there at any given time? How many houses does this fire, threaten, right? And if there's a fire that threatens 200 houses and another one that threatens 3, they're going to go fight the one that threatens 200 houses. That's just how it works. And it's like, well, unfortunately, there was nothing we could do to stop your house. Just you're from burning down. Not enough people, not enough fire trucks. It sucks. That's just how it fucking is, right? So donate to your local fire department, right? Volunteer when you can. That's something I'm thinking of doing. They do these around here. They do this sort of volunteer work where you can go and like clear out dead brush and stuff like that, and that's something that I'm very interested in doing. They've been doing it for the last couple of years, and thankfully we haven't had giant fires in the last years. Maybe this kind of helps a little bit, and that's just, this is not shit that we can ignore anymore, man. I mean, it's just fucking, that's the new norm. And that's the shitty thing. The shitty thing is that this is now the new normal, because it didn't used to be. I can tell you all right now, at least in my area, there didn't used to be giant wildfires where I lived every year. Like now we have them, essentially we have this fire season now where we can just expect there to be like massive fucking wildfires every year. Didn't used to be like this. You know, all and the thing is that the wildfire season lasts now all the way through October in Southern California, right? It didn't used to be like that. October used to be rainy, you know. This is not even 20, 30 years ago. You used to get storms in October. It would rain on Halloween. It would rain in November, right? Not anymore, man. You know? Now it's like fire season starts in like fucking April and it goes all the way to like fucking November, right? And there'll be like wind and like, you know, and then the fire makes the wind worse and all this other shit. And it's just like, this is, you know, so when people talk about stuff like, oh, okay, well, global warming isn't real, you know, or it's real, but it's not going to affect you. That's bullshit. It is. And it's like becoming more increasingly apparent every year that goes by that, you know, that it is. It's going to affect it. And it's not just here in my state. It's not just in British Columbia. It's the entire world that's having these problems, you know. Um, so that's some crazy fucking shit there. Like, let's see. So far, some stats here for you guys, right? So far, there are currently, right now, as we speak, 170 active wildfires in British Columbia. Right. British Columbia, which is north. It's supposed to be cold. It's supposed to be snowy. You know, even during the summertime, it's not supposed to get, you know, more than like... Oh, wait, wrong layer there. It's not supposed to get, like, super hot like this in the summer. 170 wildfires. Like, today, right now, as we speak, burning in British Columbia. Absolutely fucking ridiculous, right? In Washington State, so far this year, 2021, there have been 410 wildfires for this whole year. Right. In California, because California is large, there's going to be more. There have been 4,152 wildfires so far in California. This is for all of 2021, right? Which is like 2,021,869 acres burned in California in 2021. Right. Thankfully, most of this stuff where these wildfires burned this year have been in the middle of nowhere. You know, there are large swaths of California where it's just wilderness or desert or something like that. I don't like how that looks. That looks a little... We need to make that darker brown. Actually, you know what? Hang on a second. That doesn't look that bad on second thought. But still, I mean, that's fucking ridiculous. Same thing in Oregon. Not as many in Oregon, but still a lot. 2,027 wildfires currently in Oregon with over 1 million acres burned. I mean, this is just 1 year. This is not including shit that happened last year, right? Which is like, you know, how... It's amazing to me. Like, how is the state managing to, like, keep up with this, you know? And it's no wonder that, you know, they're not gonna... It's not sustainable. Eventually, what they're gonna do is they're just gonna let it burn and then just try to keep houses and shit from burning down, and that's it. And because right now they actually go out to the wilderness and they try to stop wildfires from burning as much as possible, you know. Eventually they're not going to be able to do that. It's just going to be it's just going to cost too much, and so they're just going to let it burn, you know, and that's going to have an even worse ecological impact because it destroys habitat for animals and stuff like that. So you're going to start seeing animals going extinct and shit, right? You know, things like mountain lions and stuff like that, as their habitats get squeezed tighter and tighter and tighter, they're going to start encroaching on, like, you know, habited areas even more, which means people are going to start shooting them because they're going to show up and they're going to, like, you know, mountain lions, when they come down, you know, they'll go and they'll eat, like, your dog or something. They'll go into people's backyards and they'll like eat your kitty cat or your dog or whatever. And they're going to start attacking people because they're not going to have any habitat anymore, you know, because it's just going to be burnt because their fucking like forests burn down every fucking year. So people are going to shoot all those things to death, right? It's sort of like this spiral that just goes out of control, you know. I mean, the same thing happened. I mean, shit, it's like it's not just here. It's in Australia. I mean, you should remember last year, like this sort of thing that happened now with these wildfires. What it is because this Arctic, like, you know, polar. What do they call it? The heat dome. It's kind of the same thing that happened in Australia, right? What happens is that the hot air. You know, I was watching this YouTube video on it. The hot air goes up and it's trapped by the you know, jet stream, and it mixes with cold air that's higher up in the atmosphere, and this causes lightning to form in the high atmosphere, which shoots down, and since everything's so fucking hot and dry, the lightning causes wildfires. And that's like one of the main reasons why, you know, for example, in Australia last year, like the whole fucking country burned down, right? Because, you know, because of these lightning strikes, because it was basically essentially a very similar phenomenon to what's going on right now in you know, the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia and stuff like that. Very similar phenomenon, you know. So holy fuck. And you know, the thing is, on the other side of the world, in Siberia, the exact same shit's happening there too. So Siberia, right? You think, you know, when you think Siberia, you think like ice and snow and like fucking, you know, all that. You think like, I mean, Siberia is famous for like, you know, tundra, right? Ice and snow and tundra. And like, you know, the only thing you think about Siberia is like gulags. That's where you go to like throw somebody when you never want to see them again. And they can like, you know, like the fucking commies would, you know, the Soviets would like throw their political dissidents in Siberia because it was so remote and cold and nobody ever wanted to live there. Right? And like now Siberia has the same problem with, you know, forest fires and shit. Tundra fires, I guess. This is what they would be in Siberia, right? And it's like the same kind of phenomenon that's happening in the Pacific Northwest. There's lightning caused by these fucking like heat domes and shit, you know. The scary thing is that in Siberia, under the snow and ice, there's this peat layer, right? So peat layer is like at the bottom of a lake. You have, it's called, basically it's plant and animal matter that has accumulated on the bottom of a lake, right? They call that peat. And for centuries, it's been used as a source of fuel for like indigenous people. You know, like they go and if you dig down on the banks of a river or something, you can hit this peat layer and it's flammable, you know. And like Neolithic people and stuff would like dig this up and like use it as fuel, you know, that kind of thing. So you have these peat layers all across Siberia, and the fires get down and they smolder in these peat layers. So some of the fires that are happening right now in Siberia have been burning since last year, which is kind of crazy. It's like the fire's been burning for an entire fucking year because it got into this peat layer and it's just been smoldering in this peat layer, and then the snows on top of it and it doesn't put out the fire. So you actually have smoke coming out of holes in fucking snow, which doesn't make any sense, right? Like, you would think it's like, oh, well, the snow, you know, once it snows, that shit'll go away. Apparently it doesn't. It's kind of like similar to, say, when a coal mine catches on fire. You know, like there's this very famous town in, I think it's in Tennessee, where like it was like over a coal mine, and the coal mine caught on fire and it's been burning for like 30 years or some shit. It's kind of like they modeled the town in Silent Hill over that, you know, very similar to that. Similar kind of phenomenon. It's just sort of burning underground. Same thing with this peat later in Siberia. It's just been burning underground for like fucking the whole year. So, the fires don't even go out. And you can even imagine the amount of carbon and methane and other greenhouse gases that have been released when like a fucking fire burns for a year like that. It just sort of adds to the cycle, and makes it worse and worse and worse. Right? So, remember in 2012 when they basically told us, like, hey, we've got a decade, or was it 2012 or was it 2016? Right around there. One of those, it was right around there, where they basically said, we've got a decade. And if we don't get our shit together within a decade, it's over, right? Well, sorry to fucking tell you guys, but that assessment was wrong. We don't have a decade. It's over now. It's too late. We're basically fucked. The human race is fucked right now. I hate to tell this to you guys. There's no going back. We're gonna have to adjust to this, right? It's too late, And even right now, even if we say, for example, the Green New Deal, we did everything, and the Green New Deal right now, it wouldn't be enough. It's already too late. The Earth is already going to, heat up, like, what was it, like 2-3 degrees or whatever. It's hit that tipping point, and this is just shit that's going to happen every year now. Every year there's just going to be massive wildfires all over the fucking place, right? Every year get ready for, hundreds of people to die in these giant fucking heat waves that hit above the Arctic Circle, There's wildfires in Siberia above the Arctic Circle, for crying out loud. There's not supposed to be, shit is not supposed to be burning in the fucking Arctic, right? It's unbelievable. And this has a real cost, to real people, because it's not just people's homes being destroyed, all right? It's people even just from heat waves by themselves, people drop dead. Because especially when you're not used to it, like here in Southern California, it gets hot every year. It gets hot as fuck. That's one of the bad things about living in Southern California, is that the summers are fucking seriously hot. Right, so we're kind of used to it. All the houses here have air conditioning, stuff like that. There's plenty of places you can go. You can go to the beach, shit like that, in order to like cool down, etc., etc. Right? A lot of places are not equipped like that, like it always kind of blows me away. Like, you hear about a heat wave in London, and like it'll be 80 degrees and they call that a heat wave, and then people die. And I always kind of got blown away by that. I'm like, how the fuck do you die in 80-degree weather? 80 degrees is like comfortable. Like, you don't even have to, like, you can just wear pants and shit, right? And it's because people aren't used to it. And when people aren't used to it, if they don't have air conditioning, if they don't have, if they don't know what to do in order to stay hydrated and shit, if they don't understand that, when it's hot and you're sweating, you gotta stay hydrated, you gotta stay like cool and all that. If they've never had to do these things before, then oh shit, you know what? I need to put that on that layer. We can fix that. Hang on. You see this? Skeleton bones, they have to be on that top layer, so let me just do that. But yeah, if you're not ready, if you don't know how to do this shit, and you're taken unaware, then yeah, and especially if you're an older person, stuff like that. Old people are very vulnerable to changes in extreme weather events like this. An older person is very vulnerable to dehydration, for example, right? That kind of thing. So it's, yeah, and it's just, this is what's gonna fucking happen, man. And this is what we're seeing right now, in Washington, just in this last heat wave. The death count was 30 people. 30 people died because of this heat wave, right? Do I have that about right? That's good enough, right? There were 1,792 hospitalizations in Washington because of this heat wave. There we go. That's better. Right. Which is insane. That's like that's like comparable to the pandemic, you know. People going to the hospital because they got too hot. Right. Unbelievable. You know, and I mean, heat stroke is no fucking joke. Like, it can kill you in like an hour. You know what I mean? Like, heat stroke is not funny. Like, and the thing is, you don't have to be an old person to suffer from it too. You can fucking die. Like, you can be 12 years old and die from fucking heat stroke. It's just like, you know, you sweat too much, fucks you up, you know, and you just sort of get like loopy. I've had heat stroke before. I didn't die from it, thankfully, you know, but it's not. It doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? That's crazy shit. In fucking Oregon, there's been at least 95 people dead in Oregon. In British Columbia, there are 719 sudden unexpected deaths just last week because of this heat wave, right? So who knows what the real numbers are? Because who knows how many people died in their houses? Because it's only been like 5 days, right? And like how many people have died in their houses and just not been discovered yet, right? I mean, we don't know. That's the scary fucking shit about it, right? And this is what's gonna happen every fucking year, you know. Now's a good time to start an air conditioning business. You'll probably make a ton of money. I suggest you go make open up an air conditioning sales and repair place in fucking British Columbia because they're gonna fucking need it. You know, maybe that's a cynical thing to say, but you know, we have to deal with reality. You know what I mean? This is the reality, right? And you know, what are we gonna do about it? That's the thing. It's like, okay, well, we can't stop it now. It's too late to stop it from happening. So now we need to deal with it, right? Now we need to come up with some kind of plan to keep it from getting worse. That should be the first thing, because it's not like this is irreversible. It is reversible, right? The things that we need to do to reverse it are not going to happen. Just will not happen. You know, it would require something like, you know, what is described in the Green New Deal. And even if all of those things, you know, like if we cut our carbon emission, our carbon emissions by 50% by 2035, even that is not going to reverse the shit that's already happened. That's going to mitigate it from getting any worse, you know? The thing is that every little bit helps. So, you know, if we can say, you know, because by the way, the vast majority of carbon emissions, they come from, big business. It comes from industrial, you know, factories, stuff like that, right? So, you know, when you get like conservatives and stuff telling you like, okay, well, you know, you still drive a car, or Al Gore has a mansion that he like, you know, cools off in the summer, or he uses a private jet, blah blah blah. That's just that's a bullshit excuse, okay? Because the amount of carbon emissions that are from individual people pales in comparison to you know, what you get from big business, what you get from factories, you know, shipping, right? That's like a big, you know, shipping stuff from fucking China halfway across the world is like a major contribution to, carbon emissions, global carbon emissions, right? Stuff like that. So really, and the thing is, even if you yourself personally reduced your carbon footprint to 0, it's not going to change shit. Okay? It's not going to change. Like, if you just went off and lived in the woods and lived a completely carbon neutral lifestyle, it still will not really do much to stop global warming, to stop global climate change, right? If you got, you know, 1 billion people to do that, yeah, maybe, but good luck. All right, so it's not a, you know, and that's the thing, is that conservatives have framed this as an individual, um, something that I guess an individual lifestyle choice. You know what I mean? Like the global climate change, they frame it as something that well, you should walk the walk and blah 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 blah, right? They frame it like that, but it's not an individual lifestyle choice. You know, it never really has been. It's a change. In order for it to actually be effective, it has to be a change in the way our society is set up, right? Please forgive the loud motorcycles driving around outside. You know, so it's not enough to just like buy an electric car and get like or a fuel efficient car. Like I actually have, my wife drives a Fiat, one of those electric Fiats, you know, which is pretty nifty. I still have a gas guzzling car, but my car is highly fuel efficient. It gets really good gas mileage. So, but still, I think the next car I buy is going to be an electric one, right? Just because it's like now they're starting to make them with the ranges that actually matter. Like I need to be able to drive, for example, like to San Francisco or to San Diego or something like that, and not have to worry about my car like going out, So they're starting to actually make electric cars now that have ranges in the 300 to 400 mile range with one charge, and that's what I need. So, which is kind of funny because the larger they are, the farther the range, which doesn't really make sense. You would think like, oh well, if the car's small, then it would have a higher range. That's not true. It's because if the car's larger, then it has more room for batteries, right? And they could put more batteries in it. So those like the electric SUVs and stuff, those actually have a wider range than like say the small little Fiats or Leafs or those types of things. So that's kind of cool. And I figure if I wait like maybe another 3 years or something, like every year that goes by, just the range gets higher and higher. And then pretty soon, like if I can get one that has like say a 300 to 400 mile range on it, then that's when I'll buy an electric car, like 300 to 400 miles on one charge, because that way I can drive across the country, not have to like pull over for 8 hours to charge a car and shit. But anyway, it's like yeah, but that's the thing. It's still getting back to what we were talking about. That's still really not enough. It's not enough to just do these things in your personal life. We need to basically regulate and structure our economy around it. And there's a lot to talk about in the Green New Deal. I mean, we did a whole stream on the Green New Deal some months back, so I'm not going to get too much into what's in it. But there are a lot of it's sort of become a thing that the conservatives, it's become a boogeyman. And yeah, it's not perfect and it's not realistic, right? But at least it's something. It's a goal. It's a goal to. And it's not even like the Green New Deal is not even an actual law or even as. It's basically just a set of policy ideals that we should reach towards, is what it is, right? It's not even like it's not a law that you can pass. It's just sort of this is what we should do, and you know what I mean, like goals and policy ideas to reach, And it's something, and because you think like, well, what are the conservatives? What's their fucking answer, right? They don't have an answer to this. They because they're in denial that it's even happening. The conservatives don't actually believe in global climate change. They think it's a commie plot or some shit like that. They think it's like, because conservatives are bought off part and parcel by the fucking, energy companies, the oil companies, stuff like that. They're completely fucking owned by them. And, I'm not saying that Democrats aren't either. Of course, there are conservative Democrats like Joe Manchin. I don't know if you heard, Joe Manchin gets some pretty decent amount of campaign contributions from Exxon, right? That actually came out in the news the other day. He's top on their list there. So, it's not really it's not a Republican Democrat thing, but it definitely seems to be a conservative liberal. There definitely is a conservative liberal divide when it comes to environmentalism. Remember, people like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are actually very conservative, you know, because conservative and Democrat and Republican and liberal, you know, those are not all mutually exclusive things, you know. Like it's your political party, one's a political party and one's an ideology, so you know, just keep that all in mind, right? Anyway, where I kind of went off on a fucking tangent here. Sorry, lost my place. Let me just go back to my notes here. So we talked about zombie wildfires. Yeah, those are zombie wildfires are the things when the peat smolders. Um, we talked about the number of people who died. Um, let's see. Now I want to talk a little about what we can do about it. You know, and yeah, so getting back to what I was saying here, yeah, the conservatives, the Republicans, they don't have any solutions here. Obviously, they're not interested in giving us any solutions. They're just basically just denying that the shit's happening, right? And there was a thing I wanted to show to you guys because, you know, as thousands of people were suffering through this heat wave, and hundreds of people were dying, and you know, entire towns were burning down. I wanted to see what are the conservatives saying about this, right? Because, you know, they have been the ones who, over the last, you know, 30, 40 years, have basically just been in denial, telling us all that global warming is natural, that it wasn't happening, you know. And now most of them will admit that, okay, well, there is some climate change. But now the line is that, well, it's not caused by, you know, human beings. It's just natural climate change, right? Because that was the thing. For a long, long time, they just denied completely that there was anything wrong happening at all. And now it's like, okay, well, they can't really deny that anymore. So now they're saying, well, it's just natural. It's always been happening like this, and it's just a natural thing, and you don't have to worry, and that's why we can keep drilling oil wells and making pipelines and all of that other shit. Because, you know, because other planets are also heating up and blah, 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 right? Whatever. So here's a thing here. There is a conservative libertarian think tank called the Heartland Institute, right? Which is, they're basically one of these sort of, they're a think tank, so they put out, like, you know, opinion pieces and policy recommendations and stuff like that from, a conservative, I guess, outlook. And one of their favorite things is to try and deny that global climate change is a problem, right? Hang on a second. There's a little thing right here. Why is that not erasing? What is that? Is that on my screen? Oh, okay. There was a little thing here that it's actually on my screen. It's not part of the illustration there. Anyway, I guess I should clean my screen off. Heartland Institute, right? That I wanted to let's see, where the hell is this? Did I not put it? Okay, here we go. So here is townhall.com, right? Let me just go ahead and move this over here. And I'm sure you're all familiar with townhall.com. It's a very, very famous conservative, right-wing, wacko sort of yellow journalist kind of rag where a bunch of, people like, Ben Shapiro and shit go and post a bunch of bullshit. And this is on July 3rd, yesterday, by a guy named Paul Dressian. Real threats to planet and people, right? So, because I was wondering, what's their reaction? How are they reacting you know, as hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people probably are suffering from this heat wave and losing their houses, and entire towns are burning down, and hundreds of people are just dropping dead because it's too fucking hot, right? How are the conservatives reacting to that? Okay, so here we go. I wanted to read a little bit of this. Real threats to planet and people. All right, let's read down. Okay, environmental activism was already nasty and lethal when I wrote Eco-Imperialism, Green Power, Black Death 18 years ago. So yeah, Green Power, Black Death 18 years ago. Looks like he forgot a space right there. I guess his editor isn't really helping him out here. You know, it's gotten steadily worse since then, especially with hysteria about the looming man-made climate apocalypse. Let me put the link to this down in the chat in case you guys are interested in reading this on your own later. Right? It's always good to kind of know what the other side is thinking. Right? Now, I'm not going to read this entire thing, but you can kind of see where this guy's going. You know, he basically says the models are fucked up. He's saying, then he talks about, like, you know, global, you know, warming extremists, calling them, you know, conspiracy theorists and terrorists and things like this. My favorite line here, though, if I can go down and get it, my favorite paragraph in this entire, you know, opinion piece is this one. And this is what actually made me want to read it to you guys today, right? So he moves on from, like, up here he talks about, you know, talks about the extreme left and their reaction to, you know, what he calls ecocide or whatnot, you know. And then he kind of moves down here. Now listen to this paragraph, okay? The radical left routinely employs eco-hysteria and Nazi analogies to deflect attention from the horrific disease and death tolls they have inflicted on third world people of color by denying them access to reliable energy, spatial insect repellent, and modern farming technologies. Slinging epithets at fossil fuel providers, users, and defenders is as wanton, wicked, and baseless as claims the Nazis made to justify exterminating Jews, Gypsies, Slavs, disabled people, and other undesirables. So, if you talk shit about an oil company because their product is destroying the environment and killing people, you are just as bad as the Nazis and their rhetoric against Jews, Gypsies, Slavs, and disabled people. So basically, he's comparing, you know, environmentalists to Nazis. Yeah, that makes sense. You see this right here, when he says the horrific disease and death tolls they have inflicted on the third world by denying them access to reliable energy, spatial insect repellent, and modern farming technologies. Reliable energy, he's talking about nuclear power right here, which is, you know, nobody on the left is denied any country on earth nuclear power. There's no way that we cannot, you know, a political movement in the United States, for example, cannot go to, you know, Venezuela and say you're not allowed to build a nuclear power plant. That's not how it works, okay? Right. The reason why other countries don't build nuclear power plants is because they signed on to a treaty to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And the first, like, step in that is to pledge to not create reactors which enrich uranium, okay? I can't remember off the top of my head the actual name of the treaty, but essentially every country on Earth except for North Korea and, like, Pakistan and a few others have signed on to this treaty, the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, I think is what it's called. And that basically says that they're not going to create reactors. The thing is, if Venezuela actually wanted to create a nuclear reactor, sorry for the traffic in the background there, if they actually wanted to, they could. They just would not create one that enriches uranium, right? And it, you know, and there would be, like, additional hoops to jump through with the IAEA, you know, the International Energy, what is it, IA, International something or other. The guys that inspect like nuclear power plants to make sure they're not making like weapons grade uranium, like whatever they're fucking called. I can't remember, but you know what I'm talking about. The guy like Hans Blix and shit. The inspectors that went to like Iraq to like make sure they weren't making bombs. There's like additional hoops that you jump through with them, but they really could if they really wanted to. They could do it, but they've signed this treaty to not do it. So that's what he's talking about here. He's blaming that, the he's blaming treaties like that on the left somehow. Like somehow the left in the United States managed to trick everyone on Earth into signing this treaty so that his friends in the nuclear power industry can't make money. It's such bullshit. Number one, this thing here where he says spatial insect repellents, he's talking about DDT right here. DDT is, if you've ever read a book called Silent Spring, DDT is basically an insect. It was created to kill off mosquitoes, you know, and stuff like that in the early 20th century. And it was great. And then they found out that the shit wormed its way through the food chain and would cause things like bird shells to not form properly. So it was like basically just fucking destroying the ecosystem. And then they found out that it was a possible carcinogen. So there's actually like, videos of like way back in the past, like films where they would drive around spraying DDT and children would run out and play in the clouds of DDT because they thought it was safe. And then you find out 10, 20 years later, oh, it's not so safe. It actually causes this extreme environmental damage. And the thing is that every living creature on Earth right now has traces of DDT in it. Everybody. You, me, watching this, we have DDT in our bodies now, right? Your dog, your cat, sperm whales, right? Everything. Everything has traces of DDT in it now because of this. Who knows what that's going to lead to? What if we find out later on that this shit causes... I think they actually did find that it is carcinogenic. Of course, the trace amounts that you have in your body now are not enough to actually cause that, but who knows? Maybe it might mix with some other shit that you have, whether like plastic or some shit, and cause like fucking, extreme environmental damage. I was reading a thing the other day about how sperm counts around like, the world are like starting to fucking like crash, right? And there's like a real fear now that within like 50 to 100 years, we might have a serious like fertility problem. Not just in the United States, but around the world. And it's because of pollution, because of shit like this, right? Unforeseen effects of strange chemicals floating around in our bodies that may be interacting with each other in funny ways, which, maybe that leads to something like infertility in men. I mean, that's some scary shit, folks, This is all stuff that is not going to affect me. I'm going to be dead within 40 years, I'll be dead. I'm probably going to die around the year 2055, roughly. I'll be like, 75 at that point, right? And that's my life expectancy. Any year past 2055 for me is like a bonus year, right? But, you young kids out there right now watching this, you kids who are teenagers and you're in your 20s and stuff, you're going to be living for a good, 20, 30 years past that. You can expect to live to be, to 2080, right? You're going to have to deal with this shit. It's going to be your children that are going to have problems with this kind of stuff, with these types of poisonings, that kind of thing. It's going to be your children that are going to be like living in their fucking, having like massive wildfires every fucking year, burning down everything, right? And, your children who are not going to ever see a real, like, rhinoceros in real life because they're going to all be dead, right? And, the only bugs that, the only, like, wildlife that your children are ever going to see are going to be, like, cockroaches and fucking, like, sewer rats, all right? So if you want something to do, this is why we need to do something about this shit, right? Your children, they're going to be the ones that are going to be, like, swimming around in an ocean filled with, like, a continent-sized fucking, like, patch of plastic fucking bottles, right? And, I can apologize for what my generation has contributed to this, You know, my generation really failed hard. I'm a Gen Xer. They failed hard. There was so much, you know, hope for my generation. They turned out just as bad as their fucking parents. So I guess it's your turn. It's you guys. It's your turn to, like, you know, the millennials and the Gen Zers and shit like that. It's your turn to, like, take over, try to fucking, like, save the world. Anyway, so this is some scary shit. If you want to, you know, this is basically, this is what the right, getting back to the article that we're showing here and that I'm not reading. This is what they're basically doing. They're trying to turn it around, you know. In the real world, the real threats to our people, wildlife, and freedoms come from the green zealots who demand we replace hydrocarbon energy with electricity generated by weather-dependent wind turbines and solar panels backed up by half-ton Tesla-style battery modules. What's so wrong about that? See, because they don't have anything. You know, this is why I read shit like this, right? There's no ideas in this entire opinion piece here. This guy presents zero ideas about what he's going to do about it, right? None at all, right? He goes on to, like, talk shit about, you know, wind and sun and how it's not enough and blah blah blah, and how if all the wind and solar things didn't work, and how we're going to have to put up, like, you know, if we want to do it, we're going to have to put up like fucking 21,000 turbines. Here's another thing here. Just President Biden's plan to install 30,000 megawatts of wind power off America's coasts by 2030 would require 2,114 MW turbines, whatever the fuck those are. If they operated at full capacity, they would not meet peak summer electricity needs from New York State, not less the entire USA. So what? Who cares? Okay, yeah, so it would require putting in 2,100 turbines for New York. Yeah, put in more, right? Put in more. Line the entire fucking coast with turbines, okay? Why, you know, why is that a problem? Why is that bad? Right? It's what we fucking need to do, isn't it? So who gives a shit if there's wind turbines out there? What, are they ugly or something? Who cares? You know? That right there, installing 2,100 wind turbines is going to create jobs. It's going to create jobs. It's going to allow us to, like, you know, have electricity without the fucking, like, world burning down. But this guy is just shitting all over it, and he, you know, what's his alternative here? You know, what's his alternative? What, like, farm dolphins and burn them to death? That's his alternative? Like, maybe he could make, like, a dolphin generator that works off of dolphin oil or something? Like, no, he doesn't have any alternatives at all, right? Like, I don't know. So this is, like, why I read this stuff. This is why I, you know, it's good to keep up, right, with what basically your opposition says, because really right now the opposition doesn't have anything. They don't have shit. But the thing is, you're gonna hear the lies that people like this guy spread around, right? And it'll you know, it'll be in Facebook posts, it'll be on Twitter, it'll be like people like Ben Shapiro and fucking you know, with that other asshole on Fox News, what's his fucking name, Tucker Carlson. People like him will spread these lies like they're true, and their followers will believe them, right? And it's important for us to push back against these guys because they're full of shit. So a little bit about the Heartland Institute, right? Because that's what we were just reading was from Town Hall. The guy that wrote that, his name was Paul Dressen. He's a fellow, you know, he's a member. I guess you don't really call them fellows, but when you're part of a think tank. But he's a member of this think tank called the Heartland Institute. The Heartland Institute is, of course, a conservative libertarian think tank that produces bullshit like climate science denial that we just read. They also were a big advocate of tobacco companies. So for years and years, the Heartland Institute also would do things like publishing stuff saying that, for example, smoking is not bad for you. I think this guy's eyes need to be orange. Or maybe just a little bit on the bottom. There we go. Right. The Heartland Institute, let's see, talk a little bit about them. They promote what is called free market environmentalism, which is basically denialism, essentially. But free market environmentalism is the idea that companies will feel pressured into adopting environmental policies because of their, you know, reputations, and the customers will demand them to do it, and that's why they'll do it. And we don't need regulations to force a company to do it. It'll just be like, people will just buy products from the companies that are friendly to the environment, which is complete and total 100% grade A baloney. That is not how it works in real life. If it did, we wouldn't have this problem. See, if market forces were enough to actually like save the environment, then the environment would already be saved, right? Because the market forces are working right now. And the truth is, market forces are not enough because most people actually don't really give a shit about the environment. When it doesn't affect them directly, most people don't care, you know. Most people do not really have the capacity to consider an issue which might affect somebody in another part of the world 30 years from now. And that's kind of how global climate change has been presented. That's a victory on the right. They've presented global climate change as a problem that's not going to affect you, and it might be a problem 30 years from now, but in the meantime, just buy a new car, buy a new SUV, buy a new Hummer, whatever, right? And not only that, but there are also people on the left on the right, who of course revel in the idea of polluting because it triggers the libs. So, you ever seen those coal rolling assholes? Right? This is a big thing in Virginia and those other sort of like coal producing states. Guys who fix their cars up to run off of to run as dirty as possible. And like you'll see, like they'll have these smokestacks that like shoot straight up black smoke. Let me just see if I can find some images here that don't have any kind of here we go. Here's coal rolling. Right. Guys like they'll set their cars up like this, and it'll just be like as dirty as they fucking can. You know what I mean? And they do it on purpose. Guys like this, these coal rollers, right? They do it on purpose in order to piss off environmentalists. Here you go. So there you go. It's like an entire segment. These are the same kind of people who, like, when Hillary Clinton calls Trump supporters deplorable, they went out and made deplorable T-shirts, right? There's just certain parts of the population who will just do shit in spite, out of spite. It's like, look at that. There's no fucking reason for that. He's doing it on purpose, I hope this asshole right here gets caught in a fucking massive, like, wildfire and his house burns down. And I hope as he's evacuating, scared shitless, wondering if his entire, like, everything he owns has been, like, fucking destroyed, I hope he reflects back on his personal fucking contribution to global climate change. Seriously. It's like the most and it's just so childish to see that kind of thing. Childish as fuck. You know what I mean? God, it's this unbelievable. That's what we're dealing with in this country. That's the depths to which, like, the conservative anti-fucking, like, common sense. Anti-common sense has just been sunk. It's become part of their identity now. Like, they have to, like, pollute and shit because that's, like, what God and Jesus and Donald Trump want them to do. It's so fucking, disgusting as fuck. Anyway, kind of going off on a lot of tangents this stream. Sorry about that. One funny thing that, getting back to the Heartland Institute, one funny thing that the Heartland Institute did was in 2012, they created a website called Climate Wiki, and it was basically a propaganda site disguised as a real wiki. And the only people that were allowed to contribute to the wiki, like, you had to do it through email, and they basically only enabled contributors of other members of the Heartland Institute, right? And basically it was just a propaganda site. It had the majority of its content copied from Wikipedia, of course, with lots of articles from various global climate deniers, such as Christopher Monckton, stuff like that, Roy Spencer, these sort of pseudoscience hacks that come up with horseshit science in order to try to horseshit pseudoscience in order to try to discredit global warming and stuff. So that was their contribution to that. That fake ass wiki is thankfully not up anymore. The URL just goes to one of those sort of hosting page holding sites. You know what I mean? So that's some funny shit. Another thing that the Heritage or the Heartland Institute, another funny thing they did was that in 2012 they released this sort of anti-global warming advertising campaign where they tried to use the images of notorious serial killers in order to, equate global climate change with bad stuff in people's minds. So, for example, they would use a picture of Charles Manson or Ted Kaczynski, the fucking Unabomber, and put out these ads that said, it'd be a picture of the Unabomber, and it would say, "I believe in global warming, do you?" Right? And that was pretty crazy. Here's the press release. Then this was in 2012. Here's the press release that the Heartland Institute released along with this ad campaign. Let me read this. It said, "Scientific, political, and public support for the theory of man-made global warming is collapsing. Most scientists and 60% of the general public in the United States do not believe man-made global warming is a problem. The people who still believe in man-made global warming are mostly on the radical fringe of society. This is why the most prominent advocates of global warming aren't scientists. They are murderers, tyrants, and madmen." So apparently they got enough pushback over this that they ended this ad campaign the same day they launched it. And it resulted in many people getting fired and leaving the Heartland Institute here. Somehow, if I think they were to release the same ad campaign today, it would probably go off a lot better, which is unfortunate. So that was some funny shit. And this actually resulted in multiple companies pulling money from them, including State Farm Insurance, Guinness, the company's name is Diageo, it looks like, or is that Diageo? Anyway, but they're the company that makes Smirnoff Ice. They make Guinness, some other things like that, Johnny Walker, rum. The United Auto Services Automobile Association, Eli Lilly, B&T Bank, and then also Pepsi. These were all people that were contributing to them who pulled their funding after this. Which is, I wish there was a place where you could see where companies, where it was listed that companies like this were supporting these types of think tanks in the first place, because I will gladly buy Coke over Pepsi if I knew that Pepsi is funding pseudoscience hack assholes, global denialist assholes like this. I wish there really was these types of resources. If anybody knows of a website or that kind of thing where you can see which sort of think tanks and that kind of thing get money from which corporations, please let me know, because that would be awesome. Which sucks because I actually kind of like Diet Cherry Pepsi. I think I won't buy it anymore if they're contributing to places like this. Kind of fucking sad. So yeah, that's the Heartland Institute. They are ridiculous as fuck. One more thing I want to go over before we'll open it up to some comments after this. There was one other thing that I found when I searched for on the internet. I searched for climate change hoax, and one of the early hits I got was this thing here, which I think this is a perfect example of conservative propaganda, right, when it comes to global climate change. So this is also from townhall.com. 5 scientific reasons global warming isn't happening. Okay. Which is, wow. And so here's the other thing, right? I found another website, which is actually kind of awesome. This is skepticalscience.com, right? And it has a list of basically every bullshit conservative argument that you can have, right? They have a list. They have a link to an article that basically debunks it. So, and it's funny because all 5 of these reasons are on this list. So let me go ahead and give you guys these links too. This is also on Town Hall, this 5 reasons thing. Let me go ahead and put that there. Here is a list that I found that is a pretty good resource that debunks every single one of these climate myths. So let's kind of just read through this really quick. I won't take too much time. There hasn't been any global warming since 1997. This is number 1 on the list. Five scientific reasons why global warming isn't happening. If nothing changes in the next year, this is 2014 is when this was released, right? If nothing changes in the next year, we're going to have kids who graduate from high school who will never have seen any global warming during their lifetimes. That's right. The temperature of the planet has essentially been flat for 17 years. That is, of course, bullshit. That's one that you can see right here. Number 9 on the list of things to be debunked. Of course, global warming, the temperatures in every climate system on Earth have been steadily warming since 1998. Right? So here's a nice big article, shows you all the graphs, how much heat is in the ocean, So yeah, that's all bullshit. Right? I'm not going to do that for every single one of these, but basically there is an article on every one of these reasons which has been debunks these. Number 2, there's no scientific consensus that global warming is occurring and caused by man. That's complete and total bullshit. It's 97% of all scientists in the world, all climate scientists in the world, 97% of them are in agreement that global warming is actually occurring. That's also called an argument from authority, because really it doesn't matter how many people agree that something's happening. That doesn't really change the fact if it is or isn't really happening. So when you hear this, oh, there's no consensus that it's happening, that's kind of bullshit. It's like, that doesn't fucking matter if there's like this guy over here who doesn't think the shit's happening. Look at the evidence yourself. Is it actually really happening or not? It's like, oh yeah, some dude just shot me in the face, but hey, these other 3 scientists over here say that I wasn't shot in the face. Well, look at the guy's face. Right? So this is a real famous one. You hear this all the time on from the right wing on Facebook and shit like that. Arctic ice is up 50% since 2012. That is total horseshit as well. What they're actually referring to is that because this is 2014, there was a huge melt off, right? And what happens is that the ice fluctuates, especially a lot nowadays. It'll summertime it'll melt, and then wintertime it'll refreeze. Summertime it'll melt, wintertime it'll refreeze. And basically this article here, if you click on this article, says that 50% of the ice has come back. And what it's basically saying is that this is ice that's refrozen, that melted. 50% of it melted. So that's really, it's kind of a play on words is what they're doing. It's kind of a misdirection. It's like, we lost half of the fucking ice, and they're saying that 50% of it came back from the low point, and they're going, see, 50% of the ice is refrozen. It's complete. It's like, this claim is just a straight up like a lie. Like some of these other claims, you could say some shit like, oh well, maybe if you look at the evidence a certain way. This one is a complete lie, and it's also debunked on this other page over here too. So You'll get this one a lot too from people, you know. Let's see, climate models showing global warming have been wrong over and over. Except in real life, they haven't. This number 4, that's not true at all. Climate models, like recent climate models, like within the last 10 years, have been eerily accurate. Um, a big target for people on the right is they'll talk about, say, for example, Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth. Go back and watch that movie again. The predictions Al Gore makes in An Inconvenient Truth are essentially correct. He was right. Al Gore was right. So, yeah, it's like, the thing is that when it came out, when did that movie come out? What, 2004 or something? You couldn't see it because it wasn't really as prevalent as it is now. You did see some early indications around that time. You would see things like an increase in wildfires. You would see things like, a steady increase in temperature every year. That's been something that's been happening since the 80s. It just gets hotter and hotter and hotter every year, right? But we didn't have massive fucking heat domes causing lightning strikes that burned down all of like British Columbia. Like we didn't have entire towns burning down, stuff like that. We didn't have like snowstorms in fucking Saudi Arabia, that kind of thing. While like, boiling rain like lands in the middle of the Sahara Desert. We didn't have shit like that in 2004, but we do now. And it's like it's actually come a lot faster than they thought it would. They thought this would take 50 years. It's only taken 20 years. Right? So yeah, this is bullshit. This is all bullshit. Moving on. Number 5. Predictions about the impact of global warming have already been proven wrong. Yeah, not so much anymore, right? Here's the thing. When you make a prediction, predictions are never really... There's always going to be predictions that are not correct. And there's always going to be other predictions which are correct, right? But it's what you got to do is you have to look at the overall pattern, right? Like, the evidence says that, we're getting more and more extreme weather events every year. It's undeniable. Every year, more and more extreme weather events are happening. Let me go ahead and close these things here. Did I put both of them? Yeah, I did. Let me go ahead and close those two. That is undeniable. So yeah, okay, some climate scientists 20 years ago said that all of the Arctic ice will be gone by 2013, and that didn't happen. Yeah, okay, maybe that's true. Right. And that would be a failed prediction. But look at the overall pattern of what's actually happening right here. Does the ice get, the polar ice like melt more and more every single year? Yes. Do temperatures, are they steadily increasing every single year? More and more, hotter and hotter? Yes. All right. Are we seeing extreme weather events like this? Like not just this heat dome, but remember this last winter when fucking Texas froze to death. Hundreds of people died from that. Right, from like Texas, like, basically that's the power grid like disintegrating in Texas, and like people not able to get clean water. People freezing to death in their fucking houses, like just not being able to get like food and water, right, for like days at a time. And then like, Ted Cruz like fucking bailing and going to Cancun and shit, right? While his like constituents are fucking freezing and starving and dying of fucking thirst. He's hanging out on a beach in Cancun. Yeah, see that basically tells you right there. That's what the conservative plan. The conservative plan is when the shit hits the fan, they fucking bail out. Leave the rest of us like high and dry with our dicks in the wind. That's what that's his plan there. Is to just bail. Take the money and run when the rest of us fucking suffer, right? And you remember that shit. Like people froze, and then afterwards, the people that survived, who had the wrong kind of power plan, like the people that had the variable rate power plans, like You know, there are stories about how people are stuck with like, you know, some people are stuck with like a power bill that's like $10,000. Can you imagine that shit? 10 grand for 3 days of electricity? And is the state forgiving them? Or is the state saying, no, you don't have to pay that? Nope. Nope. There's like zero relief from Texas because it's like, that's the fucking, you know, you signed up for the plan, then that's it. You know, the governor of Texas isn't doing shit to stop that, right? It's absolutely fucking. Can you imagine? You know what? If I had a $10,000, $9,000 bill for 3 days for a power bill, I wouldn't pay it. Fuck that. I'm not. I wouldn't pay that shit at all. They'd shut off my power. Too bad. I get some. I get some like, you know, some fucking car batteries and some you know, fucking solar panels because that's ridiculous. That's like buying a car almost. You could buy a used car for $10,000. You know, for 3 days of electricity. Are you out of your fucking mind? Seriously, what's their solution? You know, what has Ted Cruz done to help people in his state who suffered because of this shit? Zero, nothing, nada. He hasn't done a goddamn thing, right? Oh yeah, he's you know, getting in front of the Senate and talking about like, you know, critical race theory and shit like that, trying to pass laws to stop transgendered women from fucking like running in the Olympics or whatever. He's doing plenty of that shit. But what's he doing to actually help the people that need his fucking, you know, he's the guy that's in power right now. What is he doing to help the people that voted for him and got him in power? Nothing. Because they don't have a plan. They don't care. They don't have a plan. There's no plan on their side to help anybody do anything whatsoever. All they're there for is for money. Right? That's his entire reason why Ted Cruz is there, is so that he can enrich himself and the people that donate to him. That's it. You know, he doesn't actually give a shit when people who support him, who gave him their money so that he could get elected to make laws for them, doesn't give a shit when their like lives get flushed down the toilet. You know, it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, how many more natural disasters is it gonna fucking take for people to like revolt against this stuff, right? I don't know. Jesus Christ. And that's not, I mean, it's just all over the country. There's all kinds of like disasters. Like, you know, there have been 5 hurricanes so far this year, 63 tropical storms, right? In Louisiana, there were flash floods in May. There was a storm that dropped a foot of rain that caused massive fast fucking floods in Louisiana. Same thing in Nashville and Tennessee in March of this year. There was a tornado in fucking Chicago. A tornado that hit Chicago the other day, like last week. It's like, I don't understand this shit, you know? So yeah, it is hitting the fan. Shit is hitting the fan now. You know, it's not like 20 years from now, you know? And the really scary thing is like we can't really do anything now to stop it. It's going to happen. It's just, you know, what's going to happen now is all we can really do now is to try to prevent the worst of it from hitting. We could just try to prevent it from getting worse than it is. And we're, you know, I don't have the confidence in my nation to actually do this, right? Hang on, let me just move that down beneath that. There we go. I don't have the confidence in my nation. I don't believe that our government has the ability to pass the kind of legislation that would be required to, you know, mitigate this problem. You know, they won't do it. They won't do it because 50% of our population is in denial that it's even happening, right? So 50% of our population is like these coal rolling assholes who will, you know, fuck up the environment on purpose because it pisses off some random person on the internet they've never met before. That's why. Because they want to stick it to Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris now. Kamala Harris has taken all the hate now that, you know, that Hillary Clinton used to take. they're all focusing that on Kamala Harris now, right? You know, all the hate that Hillary used to take and that Obama used to take is now firmly, you know, they really fucking hate Kamala Harris. So seriously, and that's like our, you know, I don't know, man. I think we're essentially fucked. We're fucked. So just get ready. Get ready, you know. Maybe buy a house in a place that's far away from any woods so you don't have to worry about shit burning down on you, you know. Maybe keep a bug out bag with you wherever you are so you can evacuate on a moment's fucking notice because that's what you're going to have to do. Maybe start saving up food and stuff. Maybe those prepper guys, all those crazy prepper dudes that we all make fun of, you know, stocking up like 7 years worth of food and shit waiting for the apocalypse to come. Maybe those guys had a point, you know, but it's not going to be like a nuclear war. It's not going to be like the rapture that like fucking destroys like civilization. It's going to be like global climate change because of conservatives and Republicans and shit that won't fucking do anything about it. Right? Seriously. So, okay, let me just go down here. Let's go to blur. Let's do a Gaussian blur on that. That's too much. There we go. Maybe about that much. Right? Then you go up to here. You go to opacity. And right about that there. So that creates some shadows to be under the feet of all of our monsters. That looks pretty good, don't you think? I mean, I got to do some more on the wall and stuff in the background. Maybe you think we should put another guy right here, like move this rat over and put like a little munchkin looking dude here or something? I don't know. There is, because there is kind of a lot of empty space. Like maybe I should move this rat down into the front and put like a little sort of goblin looking dude. I don't know, I'll think about it. But I think we're almost done with this. I think I just need to do some touch up around the wall and the floor and maybe add a few more value changes and shadows and things, and we'll be looking pretty good with this. So let's see, first thing we got to do is let's merge these together. Merge that down. There you go. And then there are some people that like to take for example, there are people that I've seen that will make a new layer for every single color. I kind of think that's overkill myself to do that, you know? I mean, what that does is it gives you a lot of control over stuff. But personally, I think that's a little much, you know, putting like all of the colors, like, whoa, that's a little, this should be more around there. Don't want that to be too dark. Actually, you know what? I need to, that's a little too much. Kind of go back a little bit. This is another reason why I love Photoshop. You can just undo shit. Right. There we go. So I had this exposure like way too high. Right. What I'm doing here, this is the burn tool. You go through and you can kind of, it makes the dark things darker and stuff like that. But you don't want to turn it too high because it'll fuck shit up. And I try not to rely on this too much because I prefer to kind of do it, the colors and stuff by hand. But it can add a little bit of depth to it. Kind of go through burn things a little bit here. You know, it add. Oh wait, I have to go up to this guy. It can add like some more organic looking shadows and stuff. There we go. Looking pretty good, wouldn't you say, folks? All right, let's read some of the comments. We're going on 12:52, getting close to 2 hours. What do we got here? Lewis the Hedgehog. Thank you for joining, Lewis. Really appreciate it, man. I know I'm sorry, guys. I was not streaming during my usual time today. I had some family stuff yesterday. It's nice to actually be able to meet up with some family and not have to worry about catching a disease and dying. Seriously, it's great. Everybody, they all got vaccinated. We got together. I actually saw a couple of friends that I haven't seen in a year, which because of fucking COVID. So got together, ate some ribs, ate some hot dogs, watched some fireworks. It was fantastic. You know, you never think about how much you actually need face-to-face human contact until you don't have it anymore. You know what I mean? And I can only imagine because I'm here. I actually have my wife and stuff, so it's me and her, and we're kind of cool keeping each other company, etc. I can only imagine somebody who lives on their own for the last year, how like lonely and isolated this shit must have been. So anyway, onward to dystopia. Climate change should be undeniable at this point. Yeah, for sure. The hooting chuds won't believe it until their shoes start smoking. Unfortunately, you are exactly correct. That's the problem with conservatives in general, is that they tend to not give a shit about things until it affects them personally. You know, so that's really what it's going to take for a lot of people, is they're going to have to be personally affected, you know. So until their fucking house burns down, you know, until that kind of thing, until the forest like next to their fucking property and shit just like burns up and like, you know, all that kind of thing, until they have to fucking evacuate, then it's not going to hit home for them. But by that point, it's going to be too late. You know what I mean? Like, and even then, to be honest, some of them will still be in denial. That's the other thing. It's like, how often, you know, for example, in like Tennessee and like, you know, Kentucky and shit, how often do you see like, you know, there's been this catastrophic flood and it floods and all these trailer parks get flooded out and all these people lose their homes and shit. And then, you know, the floodwaters recede and then they move right back in. And it's like, you know, that happens every fucking year. It's like, dude, why the fuck do you live on a floodplain? Like, move out someplace where the flood doesn't happen. And so, yeah, maybe these people won't actually learn. You know, maybe when, like, their house burns down and their fucking, like, grandma dies of heat stroke, maybe it still won't get through their thick fucking caveman skulls that the goddamn world is melting. And it's melting because, you know, we're not doing anything about it. And they like to drive around in their big ass fucking honking, like, stinking trucks and shit, and make fun of people that drive Priuses. Like, maybe, like, you know, they're not going to put two and two together. I don't have any confidence in people anymore. You know, I don't. I don't have confidence in people to do the right thing because I think our society is too controlled by corporate interests. And that's on the left and the right. You know, that's conservatives and Democrats. It's all political parties in this country. They're too controlled by corporate interests in order to actually get anything done. And the people that are not controlled by corporate interests, people like Bernie Sanders and AOC and Rashida Tlaib, shit like that, they don't have enough power. You know, they really are like the only hope the human race has. I mean, them and people like them in other countries as well. Because you also got to remember, it's not just the United States, right? Even if the let's say tomorrow Bernie Sanders became president in the United States and started putting in all this environmental shit, that's still not enough. It has to be the entire world. You know, it's not. And of course, the United States produces 25% of the carbon emissions, and if we could reduce that to 10 or even 15%, if we could reduce that to 15%, that's a major chunk, and it might do a lot to offset some of the worst effects, right? But it's still not going to solve the problem, because unless we have everyone in the world doing the same, unless we have countries around the world also putting these types of regulations in and stopping carbon emissions and stuff everywhere, then it's not going to help. It's still going to happen. It might take a few decades longer at that point, but it's still going to happen. And that's why I don't think we're going to be able to stop it, you know. Now, I mean, I don't think that this is going to result in the extinction of the human race. I don't think that's going to happen. I just think it's going to make the future generations are just going to have increasingly shittier and shittier, you know, lifestyles. Quality of life is just going to get incredibly shitty for people in the next couple of 100 years, right? Because shit's going to be on fire, you know. All the animals are gone. Forget the animals, you know. Lions and tigers and bears and all that, they're gone. Megafauna is gone, right? Fish are pretty much gone. The oceans are gone. Forget all that shit, right? We'll be eating, probably fucking Soylent Green and stuff in 200 years. I don't think that'll still be enough. I still think there'll be farming. There'll still be cows. There'll still be rabbits and there'll still be small animals and shit running around. They will adapt. The oceans, pretty much forget it. You'll just have like the only marine life is going to be like jellyfish and like fucking deep sea, like you know um, deep sea vents and stuff like that, where like those are kind of separate ecosystems that don't require like sunlight or whatever, where like the if the ocean gets acidic or whatever, it's not going to affect them. Like you'll still have those types of things like worms like hanging out on deep sea vents, that kind of stuff. So there will be life on Earth. It'll will be reduced, and long after mankind is finally extinct and gone and dead, the animals will evolve again, and the Earth will recover eventually. 10 million years from now, or whatever, you know, the animals will recover. It's just that all of the lions and the elephants and the cats and dogs and wildcats and things and deer and all that, those are all going to be gone. So they're just going to have to evolve new megafauna all over again. You know, I really don't see any way of it. Like, and I'm not being pessimistic. I'm not being pessimistic. This is just what's going to happen, right? This is what's going to happen. This is not. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm not being optimistic. I'm not. I'm not trying to put anything down or claim any shit like that. Or this is just reality at this point. The only way the animals will survive at this point is if human beings take samples and like create like a seed bank. How you have these seed banks in Norway and stuff where they have like basically seeds for all the plants on Earth, right? They need to make one of those for animals. They need to make one of those with genetic samples of animals so that one day, if mankind matures enough and gets its shit together and tries to actually reverse any of this stuff, one day in the far off future where technology is advanced enough to where we can actually like create energy without fucking burning shit down, then they can clone all the animals back to life, and that's gonna have to be it. And whatever ones manage to survive, if there's anything beyond super rats and rabbits, out there, because there'll be some animals, there'll be frogs and super rats and mosquitoes and those types of like insects and things that are able to adapt to this shit. There'll be some animals, but the vast majority of megafauna is gonna be dead. And so that's really it. One day in the future, they're just gonna have to clone all the animals back to life and try to like fucking repopulate shit, because that's the only way people 200 or 300 years from now are ever gonna get to see what a fucking like what a moose looks like or what a rhino looks like or something like that. That's the only way they're gonna actually see one, is if they're able to like clone them. Right? That's shitty. This is just reality. We're not going to see any of this. I'll be long dead before all this happens. I mean, I just hope that future generations don't look back on my generation with such spite. I hope they understand that there were some of us that actually tried to do something about it. Some of us that actually wanted to, even if we were essentially powerless at this point in time. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Onward to dystopia. You can see it in your daily life at this point. Also, other things like insects dying off. When's the last time you needed to clean your windshield on a road trip? Yeah, that's true too. Mm. I read a news article about that, about populations of insects are not what they used to be. I'm really not too scared about that, because insects and like those types of small animals usually adapt very quickly to these types of environmental factors. You know what I mean? And it's because they have such short lifespans that they can usually adapt. You know what I mean? But you may see some vulnerable insect populations that are in specific niches will go extinct first, of course. Things like monarch butterflies and stuff, Other ones like mosquitoes and cockroaches and shit, those will stick around forever. So there will still be insects, there just won't be the same kind of, you know what it is? It's the loss of biodiversity. That's the big problem. You know, that's the major fucking problem, right? And when animal species lose biodiversity, when ecosystems lose biodiversity, they become vulnerable, right? And it could be like a shock like this that can fuck them up, right? So, what layer is that on? Okay, I've got all this shit on different layers. This needs to be on a. I should actually move that down, but I'm not going to worry about that. So yeah, that's the kind of scary shit. But you know, I don't think that all insects will go extinct, but there could be, for example, things like honeybees. Honeybees could go extinct, and that could really screw up food production for mankind. I mean, a lot of our farming depends on pollinating insects like that. So will there be other insects that will come and take the place of honeybees? Will they have to genetically breed honeybees that can withstand extreme heat and stuff? I don't know. I hope somebody out there in the future figures this shit out just for the sake of mankind, the sake of human beings here, so that people aren't starving to death having to eat recycled food and Soylent Green and corpse bread and shit, right? If you don't know what corpse bread, it's from Warhammer 40,000. Basically, in Warhammer 40,000, people just eat like they eat like dead aliens and dead human beings, and they don't tell people what it is. Right? I could see that being a thing. I could see that being, somebody dies and sometime in some crazy ass dystopian future, their body gets processed into food, you know, because people got to do what they got to do to survive, you know. Of course, all the rich people in the country will be eating like real food that they grow in greenhouses and shit. They'll actually have access to things like apples and wheat and strawberries and fucking beef and all that other crap that normal people won't get. That's the thing. It'll just be like the quality of life for people is just gonna really fucking suck. You know, that's really shitty. And who knows? One day, who knows what can happen? You know, there are good signs, of course, like of people kind of revolting against this stuff. You know, one thing, this is actually, I was talking to my mother actually about this. One thing that happens whenever you have a disaster or you have something like a pandemic, for example, when you tend to get these paradigm shifts in societies after disasters like this. So, for example, after the Black Plague in the Middle Ages, that kind of set in motion different forces that eventually resulted in the you know Renaissance, because people, huge numbers of people died off, and people started to learn about things like medicine and stuff like that, and that kind of eventually led to the Renaissance, and that led to you know civilization advancing, right? And things like this, things like pandemics where it kills like 3 million people and disrupts like the entire economic system the entire world over. Now you notice, for example, people are not going back to work so easily, right? They're not, now that the CDC has said, okay, you can go back to work, and people like jobs that are like the shitty jobs, the shitty restaurant and retail jobs, are having trouble finding people to work. And it's like, well, because now people have figured out they don't need that shit anymore. They don't need, they figured out how to live without these crappy fucking jobs. And people, they've either moved on and got better jobs, they figured out ways over the internet that they can make money, like driving like a fucking Uber or something, or investing in cryptocurrency, starting their own business, stuff like that. And or they've just learned to make do with less. They go, well, I don't need to work at fucking Taco Bell because we're getting our bills paid with whatever, and so fuck it, I'm not going back to it until they like you know pay me what I need. It's like you're starting to see those types of paradigm changes in the United States. So maybe that's a little bit of good news. And maybe like now that in like, you know, maybe now that like these massive heat waves and floods and like ice storms and shit are like decimating the country over and over and over, and it just becomes undeniable. Maybe that'll lead to another paradigm shift, and actually, like, I don't know, people will start doing something about it. But like I said, I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't have a lot of confidence because it has to be the entire world. It can't just be the United States. Like, even if we make all these changes ourselves, we have to get Europe on board. We got to get Russia on board. We got to get China on board. And I don't see that happening. So I don't know. But who knows? You know, it's not all doom and gloom. I mean, you got to have some kind of you know, hope to look forward to, right? And there's always, you know, and there are goals that that each and one of us can work towards ourselves. There are ways that we can, you know, even us, like, you know, because I just said a few minutes ago that, yeah, there's nothing you can do personally to stop it. And that's true. You can't stop it yourself personally. But there are things that if all of us got together and worked together, and, you know, if enough people started putting in their time and their money into like volunteering and stuff like that, and, you know, recycling and whatever, cleaning up fucking garbage and that kind of thing, you can make a difference. So I don't want to like, you know, say it's hopeless completely, because it's not 100% completely hopeless, right? But it is kind of not looking good. It's not looking good for us. It's not looking good for just the human race in general. So, I don't know. I just hope, you know, I hope somebody figures some shit out. I hope that enough people change their minds and actually start working together. And one of the things we can do is spread awareness, you know. That's something that all of us can do right now at home, you know, like it's not enough to just recycle your soda cans and turn off your appliances and shit during the day. It's not enough to do that, you know. You gotta get everybody working together. And who knows? I mean, stranger things have happened. Maybe we might actually manage to like get through it all, right? Just want to leave you all on a little bit on a higher note. I'm gonna have to end this here. Sorry, I really not gonna have time to read through all the comments today. Gotta get going, but still, thank you all for joining. Thank you for joining me on Sunday when I usually don't stream. I really appreciate that. I think we're almost done with this. Maybe one more stream just to kind of do some stuff on the wall here. You know, fill in some of this blank space up on the wall. And then I want to do some more on this banner. You know, I have to add some highlights to the banner and make the words look like they actually belong on the banner, you know. And, but I think we're looking pretty good here, man. You know, this looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and, before we end this, I have to give my usual ending, speech, you know, all that stuff. Please, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and tell your friends. I know it's redundant to say that, but, you know, it actually makes a difference. You tell people to like and subscribe, and they do it, which is, you know, really appreciate that. Before we... Oh, wait a second. TRON. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and have to end it here. Hang on one second here. Sorry, guys. Why is it not auto-suggesting? Shit. Shit. There we go. Okay. So, let me go ahead and give you guys my ending speech. I really appreciate you all joining me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lewis the Hedgehog. Good to see you every week. Thank you, Adversary Fandom 2. You're awesome. Thank you, Onward to Dystopia. You are the man. Really appreciate that. One Life of Gods. Thank you so much for joining as well. You guys are the best. Let me go ahead and pimp my other social media and stuff like that. So, of course, if you like what I do and you want to support me, you can join me on Patreon. I actually have gotten a couple of patrons. I'm very happy. Thank you also, Joseph, out there, for being one of my patrons. I really appreciate it. Appreciate that. Got to give you a shout out on every video. And you know, I'm very, very cheap. I got a $1, $10, and $20 levels here. So why don't I go ahead and I'll put this in the chat as well in case you're interested in supporting me. If you want to support me but you don't want to, you know, if you don't want to make a monthly kind of Patreon thing, I also have an Etsy shop. So I sell stuff on Etsy. I actually sold one of my little Parasite guys, which is kind of cool. That's really cool. And you can see I make these sort of, you know, scroll type things. These are very popular. These are all 11 by 17 prints. Here's an example of one. This is like a Lovecraft character, right? So you can kind of see this is the kind of stuff that I sell here. And if you want to support me, you know, and please consider buying something. I really appreciate it. You know, that would really go a long way to help. If you like my artwork and you want to see more, you can see it on my oh yeah, let me put a link to that. Did I already do that? Yeah, I did. Okay. And if you want to see more of my artwork, you can see it on DeviantArt here. I put all of my artwork up. All the things we work on in these streams. Here is this is from a few streams ago, this huge giant thing. I put it all up on this site as well. And I have my webcomic and thing on here as also. Here's another one of that I just did recently, just on my own. Another sort of art piece, you know. Feel free to download all the stuff and whatever. Anyway, so yeah, if you want to see more of my artwork, check me out there. I also have another webcomic. This is Hawanja.com. Fun for the whole stupid family. It's got ninjas and demons and stuff. Should have another page out this week. I'm in the middle of coloring it. So I'll have that up probably by Thursday or Friday or next week. So anyway, please check out my webcomic. And if you want to see me talk about toys and video games and movies, check me out on UCD Videos. Been doing a lot of toy unboxings lately because Masters of the Universe Origins are the best toys ever made, and I've been buying those like crazy. I also do game reviews, I do movie reviews, stuff like that. So if you want to see me talk about stuff that is not politically, you know, charged or oriented, you know, non-political content, you can always check me out on, you know, my UCD Videos thing. And let me put a link to my webcomic in here too. And anyway, thank you guys so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Next week, next Saturday, we'll be back to 11 or 11:30. I think it's probably going to be 11:30 next week. That'll be our regular schedule. And not really sure what we're going to talk about. I am getting ready for a stream about the about libertarians. Been just kind of collecting data on that and how they kind of evolve into the alt-right. So there's going to be a couple of streams about that. But most likely next week we'll just be talking about stuff in the news and then maybe a subject like we did today. You know, the same kind of... I think this is a pretty good format. You know, start with some news stories and then just kind of have like a main subject, you know, like to speak about. Kind of pretty cool. But if any of you guys have suggestions, actually, if there's something you want me to talk about, please let me know. You know, any kind of subject at all. Something that's cool and political related, anything that has to do with politics or culture or, you know, stuff like that. Please let me know if there's something that you want to hear about my opinion. You know, I'm all open to suggestions. And I think that's pretty much it, guys. So I will see you guys next Saturday at 11:30. So thank you all so much for joining. And adios, folks. Bye-bye.